Hey, what's up, guys? It's your boy JFab coming back at you with another video, and I got something new. I'm gonna do a little build series video on this Coleman CT200U mini bike. Let me show you what that now. It's in pretty stock form. It does have the governor removed. I did build a custom little race pipe for it. It's got to get a little PVC gas tank, and I built like this little shitty like Airbox Elite like flange there, and it works out pretty good. I just have like some cloth wrapped around for the air filter, which I know isn't ideal, so whatever. It's okay now. It does like 36 miles an hour and it rips pretty good. I love this thing. I can include some content of it right now. But yeah, so there's the little race pipe, just flux quarter in there, you know, not too bad. So this bike right now is full rigid suspension, and we're going to be chopping her up and building a full suspension, full-blown race mini bike with a torque converter kit and a whole bunch of other goodies. Mikuni 22 mil carb. I am going to get some different tires for it, but I'm going to keep using these ones for mock-up because they'll do just fine. Yeah. So badass little rig. Looks kind of ghetto right now, but I got some new paint for it. I got everything I need to try and do my full suspension kit. Parts should be showing up here in the next week or so to get everything finalized. So right now I'm just going to get started on it, and we'll see. The lighting isn't going to be the best right now because I'm working out of my shop that's like most of the way down, but it's not quite there. I still need to get my insulation, sheetrock, and get all the lighting put in. So right now we're just bare rafters. We got work lights in the corners like there, and they do an all right job of keeping things lit, but I got all my power wired in, so I'm excited about that. That's all dialed in. But yeah, so we're just going to have to deal with some sketchy lighting for right now, but I'm sure you guys just kind of want to get to it. So I'm going to get this thing all torn down to basically just a roller chassis, and then we'll start kind of dealing with some suspension geometry from there. Sorry, can't talk sometimes, English, you know. This build is going to be sponsored by Coors Light and Pub Beer. It's going to be pretty dialed. I'm excited. So got her all up on the stand, and we're going to start the teardown process. I'm going to see if I can get a time lapse going while the podcast is playing, which I know I could do on my Android, but I'm not sure about this iPhone. So we're going to see if we can figure it out. Oh yeah, I cut the kickstand off so it'll sit level on the table. You know, just haggard things. So we got her dialed. So I got a time lapse of this whole thing getting broken down to just the frame, and it only fell off of the table one time. So I'd say we're doing pretty good. See, we got the whole thing intact. The VIN plate still on there, and the VIN plate still on the back. It's pretty decent. So now it's time to start building some suspension things. I'm gonna start with the rear end. So basically, I drew up a photo of drew up a picture on some paper of how I wanted this thing to look all said and done. I will go dig that out and show it to you guys. My render that I drew up. Pretty sweet. So basically, the plan is where this area is here, I'm gonna come back to here where things get a little bit straighter so I can keep the seat bracket intact. I'm gonna have to turn the seat down a little bit smaller, but if I cut it right about here, then I should be okay. I'm gonna drop the seat down to the height of which I will be just a few inches above the motor. I'm going to continue this back flat and cap in this whole area. So this will all be reinforced and forward and down here to where the pivot, where the rear swing arm is going to be. So I've got a dual rear swing arm with dual rear shock set up with different shock position points here. I've got the motor sitting right here in the middle, and then I have a crazy cantilever style
I don't know, you wouldn't call that cantilever. It's almost like a front A-arm, but it's on a fork. So you have your pivot point here, you have your shock mounting point about halfway in between the pivot point and where the wheel bolts up here on the hub, and then straight up above, and basically you just want this point here and the point where the shock is to be completely in line, and then a little bit further forward for where the tire is going to mount up. Ideally, you want your fork tube here to be slightly behind where your front wheel is. So you want your front wheel to be out a little bit in front. Thus, why on these guys, they don't have a bend at the end, but they do have a bend here on the fork. So you can see there's a slight bend that basically pushes the front axle an inch in front of where the head tube is. So that's called rake, I believe, and that's pretty important to make a bike handle the way that it should. If you don't have rake, it'll be super squirrely and unpredictable. So that's kind of where we're sitting, and that's my end goal. I mean, that's not how things are going to work out necessarily, but that's kind of just an idea I had in my head of kind of how I wanted this thing to look towards the end, with the fire rear exit exhaust for sure. So it's looking pretty dialed. Hell yeah. Let's get to chopping. You could notice immediately about this frame that's kind of interesting, something I didn't touch on before, is the Durastic head tube angle. It is absolutely appalling how much angle we're sitting right now. And if I read this correctly, we're sitting at about a 65-degree angle on the head tube there. It is absolutely ridiculous. Where like on a lot of, I've seen, I don't know that I've seen any sort of motorcycle with front suspension that has that crazy of a head tube angle. Because even on my boy Ryan's bike here, this one has front suspension. Try this out a little bit. That's a far lesser angle. That's probably closer to 30 degrees. So I'm going to do something more similar to that instead of having such a drastic angle, which obviously ride height and the way the bike sits, leaning front to back, can affect that differently. But unless the rear end's going to be sitting a lot higher, you really don't want your head tube angle to be that sharp, or it's going to handle kind of like if you had way too much caster in a car. It's like your wheel is turning, like folding on its side as you're turning. It's kind of strange. So it feels like your wheels want to flop left and right instead of wanting to stay more true to center. So it's kind of a weird ride. The first chassis cut basically went to here and cut 3 inches down. So the seat is gonna sit slightly below this top tube here, which will be pretty dialed. So I'm going to create a plate, get this all squared up, and weld this plate in place with a gusset, and then build some new runners from there to there that will be nice and burly. And then I can section out this rear section of the frame so that there's more clearance for the tire as it swings up and down. Okay, so I got that attached here, and I just cut out some gusset plates to bracket that in. So those are gonna go right there, and then I'll trim off the excess on the bottom, and that will strengthen everything back up there. So that'll be dialed. It's all welded 360 degrees around. That's 1/8 inch plate, which is thicker wall thickness than the tubing there. So should be dialed. It already looks kind of cool. I just vice gripped these kind of centered so that I knew that this would be mostly straight, and I'm gonna leave those there as I fabricate everything else around here, just to make sure that everything's gonna be dialed and doesn't like end up twisted. So yeah, I got freshy welding gloves. Hell yeah. These Vulcan TIG gloves are my favorite welding gloves. I use them for all my MIG and flux core shit just because they're so comfortable. One side done. One more to go. Not bad for a little 110 Lincoln flux core welder, an 1/8 inch plate. Hell yeah. Making some fantastic progress on this guy here. So, see, I kind of got her all boxed in there, left and right, looking titties, and that should be plenty strong enough to hold on to everything that's going on there, because it's going to be braced underneath the seat in here too. So there's not necessarily going to be a whole lot of load there. Just has to hold my body weight and a little bit of chassis rigidity. But I mean, besides that, it should be dialed. I could definitely try and add a little fish plate on the bottom just to connect the tubes with a little bit more surface area there to this extending or to the drop bracket plate. But you know, it's a mini bike, it'll be fine. And I'm using 1/8 inch steel, so should be dialed. Welds are hot, burning good, so should be mint. It's coming out pretty good so far. I'm excited. I'm gonna be wrapping everything up for now. I kind of cleaned all this up a little bit more and then added these support bars, so that'll all be clear of the motor for the most part. I'm curious to see if the torque converter is gonna clear this. I don't think it will. I'm probably gonna have to redo this bar to where it comes further out, so make another piece that's bent out to come out around the torque converter so everything will clear there. But not too shabby. Since I don't have all my, or I won't have all my parts until the 15th, and it's like, I don't know what it is, like the 8th or the 9th today. Things are gonna be a little bit slow for a while, but I did end up capping the end of these, I don't know what you'd call them, the seat rails with some nuts. And I figure if I'm gonna cap them with some nuts, I might as well leave some threads in there too, just so I can still use them for thread things. So if we come over here and grab ourselves a 10mm socket, which I believe that's what those are. I'm sorry about that horrible camera angle. Boom. Then take those. And there you go. Those are all capped. Don't worry, I made sure to put oil in there before I threaded this in tight. But now I have some bolt-up points. I don't know what I'd use those for, but I have them. So maybe an exhaust hanger or something like that. I've got it all there now. So something I wanted to do, I'm gonna redo this exhaust because I just used the bends off of the factory muffler for this year, so they're not the best. It isn't super high flow, and I'm gonna be doing the Mikuni 22mm carb. So I'm gonna want this to come out a little bit more before it starts to bend, and then do a nice smooth mandrel bend. And then I wanna do a Y pipe and have twin exits right here, which will be sick because I'm gonna have the dual shocks and then the dual pipes, and I'll have the single motor with the CVT, obviously, the little, it's like a clone 196. And then I'll redo the headset and everything up here, get a little bit less of an angle, closer to that 30-ish degree. I'm gonna do some research on what a good angle for that would be. And then I'll have the dual shocks up front. So it'll be pretty dialed, but that's where I'm gonna leave it off for right now. I'm pretty stoked with all the progress I made for just a couple hours after work. Looks nice, and I'm excited to be building a custom mini bike because I've never done it before. So hell yeah. Thanks for tuning in to part 1 of the mini bike build series. We made some decent progress. I know it isn't super exciting that everything isn't all done yet, but it gives you guys a taste of everything that will be happening throughout this build. So I hope you guys liked it, and we will leave you off there. And after the weekend, I should have some parts sitting around, and I'll work on some more things.